Now, thank you, Professor Saroj and Dr. Travis for that interesting presentations beforehand, and Dr. Anjul also into the marketing. Now, let's say you have a good science and you uh, move into the product scientifically. Your science is good now. Then, uh, then you have a marketing strategy and you have look at all the aspects that Dr. Travis explained. Now we have a product which has been tested. You have done your science right, and uh, everything is ready. Then comes the biggest problem. Now you want to move this product here. I just have a normal bench. Uh, from the bench, we want to move this product into a bedside. I'm talking about a proper medical device. Now there's a big hurdle that you might have to jump on. So other than many other aspects, in addition to those, in medical devices, you have the regulatory and registration hurdles. And it takes time and it takes a lot of money. So we have to jump this hurdle. Now there are things already actually in place many countries, but in Sri Lanka we don't have that mechanism well set up, but everything is already there to have a proper functioning of this system. Uh, but we can relate it to other countries and the process will be the same here as well. So when it comes to medical device that need regulation, is anything that is not medicine, but related to patient care in hospitals or outside. Or if you claim that something can be useful, can be helped to treat or overcome or detect some kind of a medical condition that will be considered as a medical device and should be regulated. So that is the basic definition. So it covers everything. So, but in Sri Lanka, Ayurveda and homeopathy devices are not regulated because it is traditionally accepted method. So it's in Sri Lanka, maybe different in other countries. When you look at medical devices, the medical devices are usually developed through practical use by people might see, okay, there's this leg swelling problem. You can come up with a pneumatic pump to solve that. So that is a practical use. Maybe doctors working in the hospital see, okay, there's a problem. So we may be able to get a help from a particular type of medical device, and that is where it comes. So maybe Professor Saroj has seen this endothelial functioning or dysfunction can be monitored, and then that can predict several types of diseases. So those kind of things come from the practical use. Once you develop it, usually the product life cycle is short. I'm comparing this to now medicine because there are two types of regulations, mainly medicines, drugs, and devices. So when you compare to drugs, life cycle for a particular device, particular model is a single device. So this particular device is low. And safety and effectiveness sometimes depend on the skill of the user. So if you take a drug, when a person take drug, that is depend on the drug, whatever the effect. But if it is a device, the effect of the device on the patient will be different, depend on the person who actually operating it. So, and generally, again, when compared to medicines, the volume is low and the variation between different models are high. So those are some characteristics. So therefore, regulation is not straightforward, sometimes complicated. To do regulation, virtually every country in the world has their own regulatory mechanism. So the regulatory body in US, all known and uh, well-known organization called FDA, Food and Drug Administration Authority. That is in UN. UK, you have Medicine and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, that is MHRA. And European Union has European Medicines Agency, EMA. In Sri Lanka, like many other countries, has their own regulatory authorities. In Sri Lanka, we called it now National Medicines Regulatory Authority, NMRA. This has been established by an act, that act of number 5 of 2015, and this is in effect from July 1st, 2015, up to 6 years now. Previously, the regulatory authority is known as Cosmetics, Devices and Drugs Authority, CDDA. That new regulations for medical devices are still in preparation. So therefore, most of CDD regulations are still applied to medical devices, but the medicines now fully operated under new NMRA Act. NMRA structure is, it is an authority with 13 members, and there's a chairman and a CEO. Under the CEO, there are a division for different regulations. For example, number 1 is medicine regulation or drug regulation. You have a different division. For devices division, you have medical devices regulatory division. Under this, there's a committee called Medical Devices Evaluation Committee. This is established by the Act with particular members, and this is called MDEC. MDEC is the body that takes care of all regulatory approval of medical devices. Any device that is to be imported to Sri Lanka, or any medical device that is to be imported into Sri Lanka or that is produced in Sri Lanka, needs to be marketed for clinical use or personal use for medical purpose, should be looked at by the MDEC and they should approve. So this is where the whole decisions are taken, usually with the help of evaluators from outside organizations. Okay. Now, a medical device, a good science, as Professor Saroj explains, can come here. Right? First, initial R&D and the non-clinical studies may be your good science, maybe good scientific approach. Then you have a viable product. I'm not talking about the market viability, that should be looked at separately, but scientifically viable product where it can solve a particular, address a particular problem. Then you have to go for a proper clinical study. Even though now it is not restricted a lot, but there are gazette notification already issued for new devices. Even now we have to take the NMRA approval for clinical studies, and drugs, it is always there for devices. So now we have to take, and the ethics approval should be taken from NMRA recognized medical faculty ethics boards. So that is a requirement for clinical study. Once the clinical studies are good, okay, now you have a prototype which has been tested, you have to go for licensing. Again, when you go for licensing, you can't license a prototype for market. You have to have your final product to market. So license process, when it comes to license, they will start to look at all these practices you mean. Starting from good lab practices, good clinical trial process practices. I'm not going to go into all details. Good manufacturing practices. That means you should have already started your manufacturing. And also, a product you are getting a license, is a unique product. Every component, even a single nut and bolt, should be identified by a part. There should be a part number, there should be a manufacturer, and that part should not be obsolete part. That means there should be a supply of each and every component in your product for the longest. That supply should be guaranteed. Because if you change that part, even if you change a resistor, the behavior of the device, if it is electronic device, that can change. So therefore, the regulatory approval or the license is given to a particular product, particular model, and with all very well defined components, everything. So that is comes under all these documents that are looked at. So we are not going to look at each and every part, or the MDEC is not going to look at each and every part of this device. What they looked at are the documentary evidence that the manufacturer supplied. Therefore, at the MDEC will always look at the benefits, but as you know, any intervention, any device has a risk. You cannot avoid, you cannot have zero risk. So you weigh them. If the benefits are higher than the risks, that is when only the product will be licensed. So they looked at the safety, they looked at every aspect of the product. When they are satisfied with everything, the product will be approved. So that is the approach, regulatory control of criteria for regulation. So they are not going to test your device each and every day separately by themselves. That is up to the applicant to supply all required data. If any data is missing, application will be returned, or you will be asked to, applicant will be asked to supply data. So that data should contain the data about safety, effectiveness, and quality that is gained through all the good practices that the applicant have followed throughout the process of product development and manufacture. So it is extremely important practice to keep everything documented. I will give you an example. You are designing a small component, electronic component, an electronic part of the circuit, the module of the device. Then one party or the one group should have the first design, and a separate group should critically analyze it, find out the risk, then find out the controls that can go out of controls, and they should come up with a proper testing mechanism, and they should advise the first group to change the design to guarantee the safety or the effectiveness or the quality. And then this process, even though we do usually this, we don't document it. So when you apply for your regulation or the regulatory approval, especially if it is established regulatory approval like FDA, they will ask you the document for that particular process. So maybe have been done 5 years back. So therefore, documenting everything is extremely important. Right? Then MDEC will look at the need and the price things, and the other, they will decide themselves, but they will decide on those on the documentary evidence provided by the applicant. If they don't provide the documents, evidence, they don't get the license. To do this, the process is different for different type of medical devices. not all devices are uh, equally controlled. For example, if you have a non-invasive your blood pressure monitor, right? So which is a very low risk device anyone can use. And you have, on the other hand, your the life supporting ventilator. So if something goes wrong with this blood pressure monitoring device, okay, one thing you can get is you may have hypertension, but you may not notice it. There are a lot of people who have hypertension, they don't even know it. So there's a risk, but that risk is low. So the regulation of that device, the non-invasive blood pressure monitor, is much more simpler than regulation of a ventilator. If it goes wrong, the life supported by that will be ended. So therefore, there are different requirements. So therefore, there are device classification. At different countries, they use different classification. Again, in Canada, you have four classes, in USA, 3 classes, and then in EU, 4 classes, but 4-class numbering has only 3. The class 1 is the low risk, class 3 is the highest, and the class 2, it's a moderate to medium to moderate risk are divided into 2 classes, 2A and 2B. So we in Sri Lanka has actually adopted the European regulations, European classification method. So in Sri Lanka also you have low risk class 1, class 2A medium, class 2B moderate, and class 3 high risk. Similarly, in vitro diagnostic medical devices, so lab test devices, also you have different classes. Those are classified as class A, class B, class C, and class D. Class A is the lowest risk, and class D is the highest risk. They all are also regulated at different levels. Okay. Now, okay, we have a device. How do you know what class our device belongs to? To do this, there's a work in progress. There's a document that will come out in a short while, which is a rule-based classification approach that is for guideline for classification of medical devices in Sri Lanka. It's under preparation. There's a version that may be out. You'll be able to find out. It's not public-led, but it is available. This is totally depend on the European classification rules. So if you search for EU device classification rules, there are many documents available freely. So these are the same kind of rules. So if it is an non-invasive device, if you know it, you can look at rule 1, 2, 3, and 4 to see what class is your device belongs to. If you know that it is an invasive device, you can follow rule 5, 6, and 5, 6, 7, and 8 to look at whether which class it is applicable. Like that, you can go and refer this and decide on the class that is required. Why it is important is that regulatory requirement for different classes are different. If I get an example, site master file of the manufacturer is a must for class 3 or class 2B device, but not for other classes. That is class 1 and class 2A, you might not need a site master file. You might need in some cases, but most of the time not. Like that, there are different regulatory requirements. And also, when we come up with a medical device, there can be situation where we want to first establish the company in Sri Lanka. So we want to come up with a locally developed existing tech product. For example, we are developing a pulse oximeter. So it is for local manufacturing. So if it use the same kind of principles and similar techniques, and if it is approved to use, and if it is well established, like if it is using for a longer time, like 10 years, 5 years, longer, If it is non-invasive especially, then it will belong to the generic devices where regulatory approval process is usually simpler. So you don't need a clinical data, but you might need a comparison study with an approved device to compare, to show that your new device is also as effective as the existing one or maybe higher. But the relatively simpler regulatory process. Let's say if you have a same device, but you come up with, you claim an improved feature, right? You claim that this device is the existing one. If you take the same example, pulse oximeter, but if you claim that, okay, you can measure, I'm just giving an out of, not possible, but if you can say that, okay, it can measure the blood glucose level as well, then it's a new feature. If you claim that, if you advertise that, you have to prove that through a clinical study. But you have to only prove that part, not the pulse oximetry. That is already proved, same techniques. But if you take some data out from that, and if you come up with a method to give continuous blood glucose level, okay, that feature is not available. So you have to prove and clinically test that feature. So therefore, clinically, these improved part should be clinically approved before going any further. Of course, a new technology, new concept, innovative, inventive, or whatever the new devices should be clinically tested. First, you should test. You should prove that this actually does what it claims. And then the safety and efficacy of the device should be separately tested. So the process is stringent, so more comprehensive. You know that going through all these process takes long time. It is not quick, right? Usually 5-6 years sometimes, if it is a new device, right? And also it takes a lot of money. But at the end, if you do your science right, and if you do your process right, you will get the product approved. Why this is important is that, let's say you have a competitor. Now, once you get this product out, he wants to come to the market as well. You have not protected IP or anything. You just develop it and market it. Now, if someone comes in, important thing is that now you have gone through the 6-year loan process, and other person cannot just come and market it. He has to also go through the same process. While he is going through this particular process, you have the upper hand where you can capture the market with your product. So it is a protection in sense. Even though the process is difficult, once you go through it, once you get the required approval, you are also protected. And the regulatory requirement does not end here. It is only approved for market, but there are post-market surveillances also. And also, if it is a medical product, if any doctor report some kind of adverse event, the product will be immediately, license will be immediately withheld, and it will be investigated if it is depending on the criticalness of the that particular event. That decision also will be taken at the by the MDEC. Maybe if it is a life-threatening event, someone will, CEO can immediately withhold license, stop using that device within the country. But after that, a proper evaluation would be done again. So the process will continue again until it is cleared. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'm done, Dr. Gan.